The largest army in history did not collapse on the battlefield. It collapsed at the command table, when numbers were vast, but decisions were small. Introduction. In the summer of 1914, the Russian Empire entered the war with an army unmatched in size. Millions of soldiers, hundreds of divisions, and a front stretching longer than all Western fronts combined. On paper, it was an unstoppable force. But wars are not won on paper. What destroyed the Russian army from within was not enemy fire, but a command system that replaced understanding with obedience, competence with loyalty, and mistook legitimacy for capability. At the center of this failure stood a man who symbolized the empire more than he commanded it, Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich, the Lost Commander. Episode 18.1 Nikolai Nikolaevich, the Grand Duke, the Lost Commander. The officers on the edge of red. When numbers lied. In August 1914, the Russian Empire mobilized 12.3 million men, organized into 115 infantry divisions, spread across a front longer than all Western fronts combined. Yet by March 1917, this army, the largest in human history, collapsed from within. No enemy destroyed it. Its command did. Scene 1. A state built for obedience, not war. For over 3 centuries, the Russian Empire governed through a rigid hierarchy. Power flowed from the Tsar downward. Responsibility did not return upward. Military doctrine reflected this reality. Officers were selected for loyalty, social rank, and obedience, not for initiative or innovation. Debate was discouraged. Adaptation was dangerous. When war erupted in 1914, Tsar Nicholas II appointed his uncle, Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich, as commander-in-chief. He was a Romanov, a symbol of imperial continuity, but he had never commanded an army of millions in industrial warfare. The empire mistook legitimacy for competence. Scene 2. 1914. East Prussia and strategic illiteracy. The opening campaign exposed the fatal consequences of this choice. In August 1914, the Russian 1st and 2nd Armies advanced into East Prussia. Together, they numbered over 420,000 men, yet they operated with minimal coordination. Radio messages were sent unencrypted. Commanders distrusted one another. The Stavka lacked a unified operational plan. At Tannenberg, German forces encircled and annihilated the Russian Second Army. Casualties reached approximately 50,000 killed or wounded, 92,000 captured. General Alexander Samsonov committed suicide on 30 August 1914. Despite the scale of the disaster, Nikolai Nikolaevich neither restructured command nor punished senior failures. The authority remained untouched.
Scene 3. 1915. An army without tools. By 1915, Russia had suffered over 2.5 million casualties. The army continued to grow numerically, but its fighting capacity deteriorated rapidly. Industrial shortcomings were catastrophic. Rifle shortages forced 1 weapon per 3 soldiers in some units. Artillery units received as little as 1/10 of required shells. Ammunition shortages exceeded 60%. Winter equipment failed to reach entire armies. The High Command still relied on frontal assaults and mass formations, tactics rendered obsolete by machine guns and entrenched defenses. Bravery became a substitute for strategy. It was not enough. Scene 4. Command without accountability. Nikolai Nikolaievich command style reflected the empire itself. Centralized, inflexible, and insulated from consequence. Errors at the top were absorbed by the system. Failures below were punished ruthlessly. This imbalance destroyed trust within the officer corps. Junior officers learned that initiative was dangerous and responsibility unrewarded. In September 1915, Tsar Nicholas II removed the Grand Duke and assumed personal command. The decision came without investigation or reform. For many officers, this confirmed a devastating truth. Loyalty had no reciprocal meaning.
Scene 5, 1916. The psychological collapse. By 1916, the Russian army still existed on paper, over 7 million men under arms, but its psychological foundation was eroding. Desertions increased into the hundreds of thousands. Discipline required coercion rather than belief. Orders were followed mechanically, without conviction. When officers begin to question the purpose of orders rather than their execution, collapse becomes inevitable. Nikolai Nikolaevich did not start the revolution, but under his command, the army lost the faith necessary to prevent it. Conclusion: the commander as a symptom. The Grand Duke was not uniquely incompetent. He was the product of a system incapable of self-correction. His failure demonstrated a central lesson of modern history. Military power without legitimacy and adaptability becomes self-destructive. The Russian Revolution of 1917 was not sudden. It was the final stage of a collapse that began in 1914, when an empire chose obedience over understanding. The exception. And yet, in the midst of systemic failure, one general proved that Russia could still fight effectively. In 1916, Alexei Brusilov shattered Austro-Hungarian defenses across a 300-kilometer front, inflicting over 1 million casualties and redefining Russian warfare. In episode 18.2, Alexei Brusilov, Victory Without a Future, we examine why the greatest Russian victory of World War I only accelerated the fall of the empire. Subscribe and continue to episode 18.2.